We have Kanchan Koya today, and she is incredible. She combines her PhD in molecular biology from Harvard and her training from the Institute of Integrative Nutrition to bring healing, spices, and their incredible health benefits to kids and families everywhere. She's the creator of Chief Spice Mama, where she educates readers about the science-backed benefits of spices and inspires their use in simple, delicious ways. She also has a game-changing cookbook, Spice Spice Baby. Emily, hold it up. All my cookbooks are in storage. And she has like over 100 recipes, all harnessing the power of spices for better health, which I loved using. Can't believe I'm going to say this a decade ago, which is incredible. So we met through Instagram when we had very small followings and our kids were very young.
It's wild. Thank you so much for having me and for that kind and generous introduction. Sometimes it just boggles my mind that I've been doing this for over a decade, but also for anyone who has a love-hate relationship with social media, I feel like the love part of me is like all these amazing connections I was able to make, like meeting you, Natasha, and then Emily. So yes, it's not all crazy on social.
I'm actually holding your book, which has like pages folded down from back in the day when I first met you, first became obsessed with this book and made so many things. Now I kind of know them. I can't recommend your book enough because Natasha got me into it and then I got into it and then I got to talk and work with you at some point. And I think you do a wonderful job. But we got so many questions, particularly, I don't know where to even begin, but particularly with kids.
Well, let's start with like the science behind spices, because you do such an incredible job on your page and in your book explaining why science supports the use of spices for health. And let's maybe just talk about some of the top reasons to incorporate more spices into our diets.
So spices are truly, based on the research, some of the most highly concentrated sources of antioxidants in the plant kingdom. So we're always talking about eating the rainbow and a wide variety of plant foods, which is all really great and super important. And within that plant kingdom, there are spices and herbs, and spices in particular seem to be very, very highly concentrated, even in very small amounts, with these really potent antioxidants, anti-inflammatory compounds, polyphenols, whatever words you want to use, basically plant-derived compounds, chemicals that have these really incredible effects in our bodies and our kids' bodies. And so I like to say that if you are trying to eat the rainbow, which most of us are, because you want to access all these incredible plant compounds and antioxidants, but you're not using spices, you're literally leaving something super valuable on the table, like literally and figuratively. I think that's just at a high level why we really should be using them on a regular basis.
And your cookbook really emphasizes the importance of introducing it early in a child's life. Can you explain why that is so crucial?
So, we want to give our kids the best start, right? Like we're always thinking as parents, like, what can I do to give them a robust beginning when it comes to their immune health, their gut health, their metabolic health? And we know that spices have compounds that have been studied for their effects on all of those things. So, for example, we know that cinnamon, and we'll talk about the couple of different kinds of cinnamon because I talk about that often, but cinnamon has a compound called cinnamaldehyde, which is being looked at and researched for its effects on blood sugar balance and metabolic health. We have a metabolic health dysfunction in this country. We have, many people are metabolically unhealthy, and we want our kids to have a great start when it comes to this. Also, gut health is on everyone's mind, as it should be, because it's so integral to literally every aspect of health, not just the gut. And we have really interesting research now that when you enjoy blends of spices on a regular basis, you increase the diversity of your gut microbiome. Kids come into this world, depending on whether it's a natural birth or a C-section. Sometimes we don't have control over that, right? You want to encourage the growth of healthy gut bacteria. So we're thinking about prebiotic foods, breastfeeding, all those good things. But spices can be a really amazing tool there because they have these polyphenols, which are almost like prebiotics. So that's something that isn't usually discussed, but a lot of spice, polyphenols, and phytonutrients and antioxidants actually serve as nourishment for beneficial gut bacteria, which then thrive when they're exposed to spices on a regular basis, and you end up with greater microbial diversity. And we know that the more diversity you have, the healthier and more resilient your gut tends to be. And then we know for immune function, whether it's ginger or even cumin, turmeric with black pepper, all of these things can support a healthy immune response. We want a good, healthy immune response at the right time and the right place. So we don't want too much, which would result in things like inflammation. And we don't want too little because then, I feel like the sole purpose of my children going to school is literally coming home with a different virus every week. We
Ugh,
want them to
Yes.
have
Especially this year.
Yeah, we want them to have resilience. I mean, it's not about never getting sick, it's about bouncing back when you do get sick. And we're training their immune system, as they go to preschool and school and all the things, because we are going to get exposed to these pathogens. And so, how do we support healthy immunity with these spices that, again, have these compounds that can do that? So, for all those reasons and many more. And then I'll say one that is actually, to me, really important and not super health related, or not health in the physiological sense, but we want to encourage our kids to have wide open, adventurous palates over time. Some kids get there quicker than others. It's a journey, it's not an overnight thing. But spices are like a beautiful tool to make that happen. They have flavor, they have aromas that are different, and color. So whether you're getting your kids involved in the kitchen or whether you're getting them to guess like what spice is in this dish, you're really expanding their palate beyond kind of the very basic foods we often think that kids should be restricted to. And I think the health benefits of that long term cannot be understated.
absolutely. Even we do sweet potatoes on the regular here. And I saw one of your videos, maybe it was like a week ago, where you were putting cardamom on the sweet potato. And I was like, why didn't I think of that? I think there's also a common belief that like babies should only eat bland food. And you guys can both really break that down.
Yeah, I posted yesterday on Instagram that 5 myths around spices and kids and babies that should have been busted like a decade ago.
Yeah.
But we still have to bust them because, I think people are just misinformed or not informed. And I mean, Spice Baby, my platform, really started back in 2014 because I had so many moms here in New York City asking me, like, wait, why are you adding cardamom to the sweet potato you're giving your kid? Like, are you sure that's legal? Are
Is
you
it
sure that's
safe? Is it safe? I think people also have this narrative behind spices that, oh, it's only spicy food, it's just spicy or not, and they don't realize all the benefits behind it.
right? And to that, I always remind people that most spices outside of the chili pepper family and maybe black pepper, if you're very sensitive, are actually not that, they're not spicy.
Yeah.
Flavorful, whether it's cardamom or cinnamon or cumin or turmeric or paprika, ginger, garlic. They have flavor profiles that are, may be new to an emerging palate, but they're not spicy. So often people are like, oh, I don't want to irritate my kids' taste buds or like tummies. And any pediatrician will tell you there is no basis, no scientific basis to offer kids bland food. And the more variety and the more flavor we can expose them early on, the better.
Yeah. I think some of the biggest questions we've gotten are around all of the controversy with, like you brought up cinnamon, with lead being present in a variety of spices. And now I see they're swinging and they're saying, oh, well, we're not going to use any spice. Break that down for us.
Yeah, I think it's very similar to things like matcha or rice, for example. So there was a big scare about arsenic in rice, which is a truly legitimate concern. Heavy metals in matcha, which we know is an incredibly health promoting drink. I mean, not for kids, but for the moms. So there's so many foods out there that have this potential risk that are incredibly health promoting, but depending on the sourcing, could be a source of contaminants, whether it's heavy metals or other toxins and things like that. So I think, unfortunately, with spices, because of a lot of the headlines, we have kind of thrown the baby out with the bathwater, And I always remind people, like, the source matters hugely. Good brands will test their spices for heavy metals and will share those test results with you. Consumer Reports actually did a bunch of independent testing. And on their site, there's a list of spices that you can find at pretty much every grocery store, not necessarily like the more niche brands that I tend to like because of single origin, quality, blah, blah, blah. But even like McCormick, okay, which I mean, I think it's a great entry point for people who maybe only can find that at their local store. McCormick and Simply Organic actually came out in the Consumer Reports testing as safe for heavy metals. So the thing that I really tell people to avoid, unfortunately, is shopping for spices at open spice markets. You're traveling, you're in Istanbul, Turkey. I mean, I've been there, it's beautiful. The spice market is like mesmerizing, but those spices can often be contaminated and there's no way to know. And one of the reasons you'll see lead in things like turmeric specifically is because manufacturers, unfortunately, or the middle, I would say the middleman or woman or whatever, the middle party will often add things like lead chromate to turmeric to kind of make it look more vibrant and
More
red.
orange, yeah.
Yeah. So if you see a turmeric that looks like flaming orange, that's kind of a red flag. It should be more yellow. And if you have a doubt, like reach out to the brand and ask for a certificate of analysis. And a good brand should be able to share that with you. And if they don't, then move on.
I was going to ask where do you both where do you both buy your spices from?
Okay, so I'm also a fan of Burlap and Barrel. Natasha knows them. I know them. They're a lovely company. They work with single origin spice farms to bring these incredibly high quality spices. They test all their spices. And so I like them. I also like a company called Diaspora Co., which is only sourcing spices in India. Burlap does it world over. And I also have a spice collaboration with La Boite, which is this beautiful spice blend shop here in New York City. Lior Lev Sarkars is the chef and owner, and they also have really high quality tested spices. And they're known for their blends. And we'll talk a little bit about blends because I do think blends are a really interesting topic. And from a research perspective, quite interesting to focus on. So those would be kind of the three that I shop at. But sometimes I'm at my local store and I've run out of something and I'll just pick up like the Simply Organic Ceylon cinnamon,
Yeah.
And it's fine.
Yep, I do the same thing. So gut health is a big topic, and we got a lot of questions about gut healing spices. If you had to pick, I don't know, your top 5 best spices for gut health, or what would they be?
Yeah. So
I'm
I would
taking
start
notes.
with ginger. Very
Anything that has
accessible.
to do with gut health, Emily's always on.
Right. So ginger. Okay. So whether you're using the ginger root, which is actually technically the underground stem or rhizome, the little brown bulbous thing, or you're using the powdered ginger, they're both great. The root is going
Wait,
to
do you
have,
use the skin on the ginger or just do you peel it?
yeah.
This is coming
So
from someone who doesn't use her kitchen, by the way, but I love you. She's gotten
I,
better, though. She's gotten better.
I've cut ginger before and put it in stuff.
okay. So here's the thing. Ginger has a ton of these beneficial phytonutrients, polyphenols, and actually the skin has very unique phytonutrient antioxidant profiles. So the short answer is we should ideally be using the skin, especially if the ginger is organic. So I like to encourage people to try to find organic ginger, Dr. Organic Mommy approved, and then use the skin. Now, in certain preparations, the skin from just a textural perspective can be a little
Doesn't
awkward.
taste good, yeah.
Yeah,
I
like
use
if
it,
you're,
like, in my tea. Like, when I cut up ginger
yes.
and I put it in my tea, I use the skin.
So anytime you're straining it out, if you're doing a tea or you're doing like broth where you can strain it out, I would use the whole ginger with the skin. Like just smash it or slice it up and
Or
simmer
put in
it
the
in water.
blender.
Yes, smoothie is another great example where if you're adding a little ginger to a kid's smoothie, you can totally add the ginger with the skin. Now, when it gets awkward taste wise, is if you're, say, grating ginger into a lentil soup, it would be a little weird to get the fibrous skin bits in your mouth. So, there, just from a more kind of culinary perspective or reason, I would take the skin off. But from a health perspective, you really should be having the skin as much as possible. So the second spice for gut health that I love is turmeric. Turmeric is a potent anti-inflammatory. You want to pair it with black pepper. Just a tiny little pinch of pepper is all you need to substantially improve the bioavailability of the turmeric. So turmeric has a compound called curcumin, which has been shown to have all these amazing effects on different systems in the body, but it's not very well absorbed. When you pair it with a little bit of black pepper and a little bit of fat, like olive oil, or your favorite source of fat, you're going to get better absorption. So that would be number two. Number three actually would be anything in the red pepper family. So I know red chili peppers scare people, and especially for kids, that's a legitimate concern. I didn't offer my daughter, who's now 8, red chilies until she was like 5. And maybe
I
that's
might I must be the mean mom because I just threw it over to my kids.
yeah. I mean, she probably got it in Indian food here and there, but like I didn't think, oh, I should add chilies to her food until she was a little bit older and I wanted to train her palate. But anything in that red pepper family, so like paprika, smoked or sweet paprika, is going to have some beneficial compounds that are great for gut microbiome
Like
diversity.
just
And
roasted
then we
red
also,
pepper, does that count?
yeah, that's actually, so paprika is dried red peppers ground up into a powder. It is essentially all has that similar
For all
compound
of
release.
you not being able to watch, Emily's mind is, like, blown right now. She's like, "Oh, wow. I
Yes.
did not know that."
No, I don't
I
know
don't
these
know, I just
things.
love
And
saying
also,
that. I
I'm
mean,
I'm validating myself because I eat a lot of roasted red peppers, and I'm like, okay, good job.
yes, I love it.
Okay,
You're already
alright.
there.
Next what's the
And
next
then I
one?
would say, yeah, I would say the other spice that is so helpful for gut health, and it will not come as a surprise because it is the key ingredient in gripe water, which all of us have heard of if we've had babies, is fennel. So fennel is a seed. It's often used in things like culinary preparations like roasted potatoes. If you've been to an Indian restaurant, at the exit, you'll see like fennel seeds often. That's because it's a potent digestion aid, great for gut health, great for heartburn, flatulence. So if you have like a colicky baby, I always tell the moms to drink fennel tea. There's also evidence that fennel may help with lactation. So it's kind of a win-win-win-win all around. But if you want to make yourself like a fennel, cumin, coriander tea, those are all great spices for gut health. So I listed more than 5, but if I had to summarize, I would say ginger, turmeric, fennel, cumin, coriander, and anything in the kind of paprika, red pepper family.
I go through a bag of paprika way too often, so I get that. Alright, so a lot of people were asking in the IBS community, saying, "Do they need to avoid spices?" Is that actually true? And if not, like, what spices can be helpful for managing IBS?
So this hasn't been studied really systematically, but I would say that IBS is quite complex and multifactorial, and certain things can cause flare-ups in people and irritation in certain people. So I think one of the most common pieces of advice for IBS is to keep a food diary and see what a trigger is. If I were to suspect a spice that would be a trigger for IBS, it would probably be a spicy spice. And notice I said spicy spice because not all spices are spicy. So spicy spice would be like your chili peppers, especially the really potent ones that do have sort of can be irritating to the GI tract in excess. So aside from that, I don't think there's any evidence that any other spices are problematic for IBS. In fact, we know that one of the underlying causes for IBS is gut dysbiosis. So an imbalance in gut bacteria, not as much diversity. And we just talked about how spices have been shown to improve gut microbiome diversity. So I would say actually adding more spices may benefit in the long run.
As a person with gut issues, like it's the opposite. Like eating bland toast is actually the worst thing for your gut versus gluten-free everything and adding tons of spice. Maybe what we grew up with is not.
Right. I do think that sometimes these kinds of like elimination diets can be helpful where you just eat very simple food for a little while just to understand what the trigger foods are. But we know from a long term perspective on gut health, diversity in the diet is so important. So, yes, we don't need to be eating those same 5 foods, rinse, repeat. We need to be eating 30 unique plants a week. And that actually includes herbs and spices.
So there's also a growing interest in how spices can support mental health. Are there any particular spices that can help with an anxiety, and how do they work?
The ones that have been looked at for specifically things like anxiety are actually saffron. Some people say saffron, whatever. Saffron and then turmeric with black pepper again. So turmeric seems to have this like slew of effects. Again, the big challenge with turmeric is the bioavailability and the absorption. But if you can cook it in a fat source with a little bit of black pepper, you're going to be improving that substantially. And then saffron has been looked at for compounds that can help with things like anxiety. If you are in full-blown anxiety mode and you're looking for like a therapeutic, you may want to talk to your doctor about a saffron supplement, because I don't think the spice alone is going to give you high enough concentrations of the compound, which is called croquin, to really have an effect. But if you're looking to just support overall mental health, which is linked to gut health, again, there's that gut-brain axis we know, adding these spices on a regular basis really seems to be key. So in studies where they've looked at inflammation, which we know, chronic systemic inflammation can cause havoc in multiple systems in the body, including the brain. There may be an inflammatory component to things like depression and anxiety. We really want to be having these spices in culinary amounts, but on a consistent, regular basis. Like, just like you use salt and pepper all day, every day, try to think of your spice rack in the same way. Like, don't reserve it for that special Saturday night meal. It should really be part of your kind of arsenal in the kitchen every day, 3 times a day, however many times you cook.
I love that. Definitely agree. I have it in the kids' oatmeal, put it in their veggie frittata this morning. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. And another spice, actually, 2 spices for mental health that have been studied in animals. We need more data, but there's really no downside. One is vanilla. And I know I've seen you, Natasha, do like the vanilla bean sometimes and the oatmeal. I mean, I love vanilla. I feel like people don't use it enough. The vanilla extract is fine, but if you can get your hands on just ground vanilla bean, they actually take the vanilla pods and they grind them into this beautiful like dark powder that's vanilla bean powder, and you can just sprinkle that on oats. I sometimes put it on my toast that has like tahini and date syrup. It's literally heavenly.
It's like heaven.
Yum.
It's so good.
It's so good. And then cinnamon. And maybe this is a good segue to talk about the 2 kinds of cinnamon, because I do think that's important when it comes to
Yeah.
kids. So cinnamon, again, the scent of cinnamon alone had a mood boosting effect. So, don't snort cinnamon. I think there was a YouTube trend where people were like,
Saw that.
yeah,
Oh my
bad.
God.
No, don't do that. That can send you to the ER. Just the scent. There's a difference between scent and snorting. A scent of cinnamon on your oatmeal or your, almond butter on toast with some pomegranate or blueberries can be a mood lifter, or in your chai or even your coffee.
But talk about the 2 different kinds of cinnamon.
Yes. So I've talked about this ad nauseum, but I will do it again because it's really important, I think, especially for kids. So there are 2 main kinds of cinnamon. The one that you routinely find at your regular grocery store, the one that just says cinnamon on it, unless it specifies, is basically a variety called cassia cinnamon. There's nothing wrong with it. It's wonderful. It's the cinnamon that you most commonly associate with things like holidays and, eggnog and treats and those sorts of things. The problem with it is that if you enjoy cinnamon regularly, like say you're somebody that puts it in their smoothie every day or in your kids' oatmeal every day, at high enough doses, it may pose a liver toxicity issue because it contains a compound called coumarin. If you're using it once in a while here and there, it really doesn't matter. This is really for those of us who are using it regularly. I'm one of those people because it has so many great benefits. You want to go out of your way to find the second kind of cinnamon, which is called true cinnamon or Ceylon cinnamon. It's just a different varietal and it has very little, if any, coumarin, which is the potentially problematic compound. So if your jar of cinnamon says cinnamon, you can assume it's cassia, and it should say either Ceylon cinnamon or true cinnamon. And you can find it online. I think Simply Organic even has a version like at my regular grocery store. I know Burlap and Barrel has one that's true cinnamon. They call it cinnamon verum. So definitely lots of options to find it. But if you're using it regularly, I would go out of my way to look for true cinnamon.
Can I ask a question about the vanilla bean? Because my internet got cut off. So for the vanilla bean, you should be buying whole and taking it apart the way Natasha does and putting it in for the benefit of what exactly?
So it's, again, very high in antioxidants, and it may have mental health supporting effects like a mood boost, antidepressant effects. I mean, I don't know anyone that hasn't smelled like really good vanilla bean and hasn't been instantly uplifted.
It's true. They're all happy.
Natasha, you'll give us the place where you buy yours, like in
where I get
Hawaii or
Lay
something.
vanilla in Hawaii. Yeah, though my kids didn't knock the oatmeal twice a week, so we now have it down to once a week. We subbed one oatmeal for a veggie frittata. I was like, oh, I love making oatmeal because of the smell.
To that, so.
Oh, I do, but I mean, I love the vanilla smell in the morning.
You could put red peppers in your veggie frittata, and that's healthy.
Emily's so excited. Ah, okay, let's talk about weight loss. So, what does the research say about spices and metabolism or fat loss? I know we touched a little bit about, metabolic health and cinnamon, but are there other spices that can help?
Yeah, so there's a couple of studies on two spices, cumin and chili peppers. So a lot of weight loss supplements will contain sometimes capsaicin, which is the active compound in red chili peppers, which is thought to be a metabolism booster. Cumin, in one study, was shown to reduce waist circumference when regularly consumed with yogurt. The way I feel about spices and weight loss is unfortunately, there are no magic bullets. These metabolic enhancing effects are probably small. I think cinnamon is an exception because we have so many studies looking in pre-diabetes populations, diabetics, where regular consumption of cinnamon can actually lower average blood glucose levels in a pretty meaningful way. But I think these other spices where we're looking for that metabolic boost or metabolism boost, at the end of the day, we all know it comes down to the basics, which unfortunately are just boring, but they really work.
They
Which
work.
yeah, just eat real whole foods, as little processed food as possible. Don't eat too much. Like the famous line from Michael Pollan, right? Eat real food, not too much, mostly plants. That's his like famous quote. And I feel like that's a pretty good summary of what we know. So obviously we could do a whole podcast on weight loss. I mean, we
Oh,
know
yeah.
we need to eat enough protein and fiber, but in terms of quick fixes and spices, I wouldn't say the research is robust enough to go and like double down on, chili or capsaicin as a weight loss tool. But it would be great to add more anti-inflammatory compounds, improve your gut health, and make your food more delicious.
I'm all for that, especially when people feel like they're, you know, eating like the same thing over and over again or trying to get enough protein in their diet. Spice it up.
Totally.
For someone who's new to cooking with spices, what are some easy ways to start incorporating them into everyday meals?
Yes, my favorite question. The advice that I give everyone is if you want to start adding more spices to your baby's food, kids' food, your family table, don't feel like you have to reinvent the wheel. Start with what you already make and already love and start adding spices to that. So, say your family loves to start their day with scrambled eggs and avocado toast. How can you add spices to that? You can sprinkle some sumac on your avocado toast, which would add a beautiful lemony tang and those amazing anthocyanins and antioxidants. You could make golden scrambled eggs with a little bit of turmeric and cumin or coriander or
And a
paprika
little
or
black
all of
pepper.
those.
And a little black pepper.
And a little black pepper, always, yes. So take what you already love, what you already make. You're making a beef bolognese or a lentil bolognese. You can add, garlic and paprika. I like to add cinnamon. I know people are like, what? Cinnamon
No,
doesn't
but cinnamon
only
and meat is so good.
Cinnamon and meat is literally the basis of every blend that you find around the world. Like garam masala in India, which we use for meat dishes, has cinnamon in it. A lot of Middle Eastern blends have cinnamon in them. So, yeah, play around, but take what you're already making and start there instead of feeling like you have to buy a whole new cookbook and start from scratch because that feels really
Mm.
intimidating and overwhelming to people. So, your favorite snacks, if you're making popcorn for your kids from scratch, which I love to do, spice up your popcorn with something like za'atar or turmeric with a little black pepper. If you're making banana bread, add a little bit of cardamom and cinnamon and nutmeg. If you're making hot chocolate for your kids, a great way to add things like vanilla and cinnamon there, maybe a little bit of saffron. If your kids are sick and you want to give them a little golden milk, that's another great way to add, things like saffron or other immunity supporting spices like ginger and star anise. So start with where you're at and add spices to that.
What's up with star anise? My own personal question. Star anise being so hard to find.
Oh, is
Is
it? Oh
it
my gosh.
really?
It's
Mm.
I don't.
very hard for me to find like whole star, like the star anise. So whenever
There
I
was
find it,
this small study I remember us looking at that was saying that like star anise was more beneficial than Tamiflu for treating the flu, and maybe it caused a little run on that.
Yeah, interesting that it's hard to find. Maybe people just bought a bunch of star anise because it's flu season. Yeah, I usually get my whole star anise online. But
Yeah.
I would say that Tamiflu, which is probably the only real kind of antiviral, anti-flu medication we have, the starting point in the synthesis of Tamiflu is a compound called shikimic acid, which is derived from star anise. A lot of our meds are derived from natural compounds found in the plant kingdom. Now, that doesn't mean if you have a bunch of star anise, it's going to be the equivalent of Tamiflu. But let me just tell you, whenever I'm getting sick or I feel like my kids are sick, I will make a spice tea with ginger, cinnamon, clove, which is a potent anti inflammatory and can help with sore throats and very high in antioxidants, and star anise and cardamom. And I turn it into chai for me and a non caffeinated version for my kids. And everybody drinks it once it's cooled with a little bit of manuka honey.
That sounds delicious. I am coming over. I'm only 3,000 miles away. I that sounds amazing. I think the last question that we missed is like, of all these great recipes that you share with everybody that are so incredible and mouth-watering, like look and sound delicious, what is your personal favorite? Like, what are your couple go-tos?
Okay, I'll just put myself in my kids' shoes because they would pick differently than me. And maybe
Okay.
that'll be more interesting for the audience because everyone's
Okay.
cooking for the whole family. So I do love this tandoori cauliflower that I do. It's kind of a showstopper. It's a whole head of cauliflower that you roast in the oven. So you just steam it really quick to speed up the cooking process. Otherwise, it would take forever in the oven. And you make a marinade with a tandoori spice blend that you can buy online. I have one with La Boite, but there are many others. It has a bunch of spices and then ginger and garlic and a little tomato paste and yogurt. You can use a plant-based yogurt to keep it vegan if that's your thing. And then you just coat the cauliflower with that tandoori marinade and you bake it in the oven. And it's just a showstopper. Everyone can slice into it. You serve it with like some couscous and your favorite protein like fish or tofu or whatever you're into. So that's a great one, and the kids like it as well. They love cauliflower, my kids, so I'm grateful. And then the second would be, let's see, my family does love a chili, I will say, especially right now because it's cold. So, and chili is such a great way to add spices. I mean, you can take it in so many directions. Our mutual friend, Pamela Salzman, has a really beautiful chili that she does with sweet potato and clove, which is such an interesting profile, like flavor profile. But you could do, your cumin, your coriander, paprika, a little bit of ginger. You could do cinnamon and chili, which would be really great. I'm telling you, another great combination is cinnamon and a little bit of melted dark chocolate or rock or cacao that adds like a depth of flavor to the chili. So we love a good chili because it has like the protein, the beans, the fiber, the cooked tomatoes with the lycopene, like all the good stuff, and it's so comforting.
I gotta add that to the rotation. Yeah,
Oh,
Natasha does
chili?
it all
Chili's
the
just
time.
easy because it's just I put it all simmer all the spices and then, like, the
You put
onions
it
and
in
the
the slow
garlic
cooker, right? Is that
in the Instapot, and then I just throw everything in so I don't have to think about it.
Yeah, and then everyone builds their own bowl. They can put like whatever they want on top, like a
Yeah.
little chili bowl with their whatever, little
Avocado,
tortillas.
you can do,
Yeah,
like, coconut yogurt or sour cream or whatever, grated
totally.
cheese, all that.
okay? I'm adding
Cool.
that to the
Now I'm
rotation.
hungry. I know, now
I
I'm hungry.
know, I
Yeah, we're all
know.
hungry. Yeah.
Oh, well, this was so interesting. I love just seeing your face again, and I hope we can see
Aw.
each other in person soon again one of these days, like
I
that
know, we
dinner.
used to be able to do some of these meetups with all of our friends that we met through
Remember that
Instagram.
dinner at Plant Food and Wine? And was it when we were there?
Yes.
I know, that place closed, which is so sad.
I know.
I know. There were a
Are
couple
you
of dinners, and it was always so nice to meet everyone in real life.
Thank you for doing this. So happy to
Oh,
see you.
absolutely.